Everybody, welcome. I see some of our faces from Rework Week. I'm so excited. Hi, Candace. And it looks like we have we've got about 5 people. Now I'm gonna try something. This is an experiment because I was told that because we have it on Facebook for our Rework Week, and it was suggested that I could do it live on Facebook. So I'm gonna try that, and then we're gonna stop playing with technology and proceed. I'm so happy, Cammie, that you were able to make time to join me today.
I am so happy to be here. I miss you like crazy.
I know, I miss you too, and we live too far apart now.
I know we do. And even the 3-hour time difference is like significant.
It's a thing. It is a thing. And we were supposed to, for those of you that are on with us, Cammie and I were supposed to get together right when COVID hit. And we were we had a whole weekend. Oh. We were gonna do a thing for Duolingo, and we had to cancel it. And I was so bummed. It was like literally right when it hit.
It was that was supposed to be the first week of April. So yeah, but
here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. Well, Cammie, I don't even know if I've talked to you much about what Rework Week has been, but we've been doing a whole week's worth of activities with people on Facebook and through our email campaign system. I think we had 130 people sign up, and it's all been free. We gave away 20 licenses for the new Love Your Job curriculum. And we had special gifts every day. Some of our winners are on the phone. We gave away bracelets and care packages. And it's been really interesting just hearing people's stories about work fit, and some employed, some unemployed, some underemployed. And I think because we have a small group, if you want, folks, you can put your camera on, because we only have about 8 or 9 people. You don't have to, but we always like seeing you. And do weigh in on the chat if you want to say where you're from. And also, if you have a particular question of Cammie and I, do feel free to weigh in. We just really wanted to take the time. Cammie is, in addition to being an amazing human, she's the co-author with me of Fit Matters, How to Love Your Job, our best-selling book that we wrote together. And she's currently in her role as a CMO of Duolingo. And I'm sure you're really busy, so thanks for taking time out on a Friday afternoon to talk to us. We don't have a full script or agenda. I just wanted to talk about, like, especially you mentioned in your email when we were texting, like this whole idea of fit during COVID and amidst the backdrop of the racial unrest. Like, what's servicing for you in your work right now?
There are a couple of things. One of the things that, you and I really saw when we were writing the book was the growing importance of meaning in people's work. And, the sense that a lot of us were willing to trade off some other things to be at a company that we felt like really aligned with our values. And I think that's just growing in importance right now. And it's going from a place of, I want to know that my work makes a difference. And that's where a lot of meaning comes from. But also, I want to be at a place that is aligned with the values that I see in the world. And it feels like we really are in the midst of a significant shift in the need for companies to step up and take positions on difficult issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that meaning and that purpose side is becoming so critical. And we're seeing so much about people making choices about what they will buy, right? Who they'll buy from, noticing whether they have a stance on things, on values, on beliefs, on safety,
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I mean, we kind of called it on that one.
We did. We did. It's exciting to see, and it's exciting to see business leaders really stepping up to a sort of a moral imperative, as well as just um, their commitment to growing businesses is about doing it in a way that really is consistent with human values.
Well, yeah, and they can't hide either. Like that's what I'm noticing. I was talking to a guy actually who is a friend of my daughter's living in Portland, and he was telling me he actually was working for a company here in Bend. It was a restaurant who opened up in phase 2 of COVID, and he was telling me about this conversation he's having with his boss because he wants to wear a mask. But he's been told by his boss, who's a frontline supervisor, that he doesn't need to wear a mask. And he's saying, but my mom's immune compromised and I would feel safer. And the company actually recommends wearing masks, but he's in a conflict around kind of values with his direct boss and trying to navigate that. He wants the job. He likes working there. He believes his company also wants him to be safe, but he's having a rumble with a little bit of a hard conversation like, well, here's what this means to me. And I think that both for COVID and for the racial unrest that we're all living in right now, I think those things are so present. And it makes it important for candidates, but also for current employees, doesn't it? With how do you, explore?
Absolutely. And I think that I was in a conversation with a lot of marketers today. As you may have been following, there's lots of conversations right now about potential boycotts of Facebook.
Yes.
And for many of the CMOs, this is an issue that really is rising up from their employees,
Yeah.
saying, I think that we need to take a stand on this. So it's exciting to see employees starting to have that kind of agency and that kind of voice.
Yes. How are you seeing that with Duolingo? Because I know you're really working for a company that has a strong stance on some things.
Yeah, it is for me. It's one of the best parts, and writing the book was helpful for me to think about fit in my own life and how to make trade-offs. And coming to work for a company that is so mission based and really believes that making language learning accessible is a key to building bridges across cultures, and it's also a key to unlocking economic opportunity for people in much of the world. So we are very mission based. We've been very aggressive on gender equality. We just brought on, we have a female majority board of directors. We have females in, a number of executive leadership positions, but we have not made anywhere near the progress that we need to make on racial equality. And so this is resulting in us really having to do a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking about how we use our voice for good in these important areas of human equality and human justice. And a lot of it, it's just a pleasure to be at a company where people don't have trouble admitting that we are so far from where we need to be.
Oh, I love that. And I love that. And I think it's some of I'm seeing, every company right now, at least the companies in my suite are like really wanting, they're waking up, they're saying like, okay, we haven't had a clue on race, or we haven't actually walked our talk. And I am noticing it's harder for companies to own up to what's real in their systems and to say, yes, we value this, and no, we don't have representation, we don't have equity or parity, we aren't being responsible in the communities in which we operate. So I really respect Duolingo and you saying, hey, we are doing really well in these places, and here's a place around equity, around race, that we still have work to do.
Right.
And then going about and getting that work. And I think that's the first step, isn't it?
Yep. And committing to it as a long-term commitment and long-term journey.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is a long-term journey. And I had a really fun conversation. I started this series in response to some of the racial dynamics. As you know, I work some in the inclusion and equity space, and I started this program called Know Better, Do Better Hour. And we had our first session this week with my coach, actually, Susan Hyatt, who is a white woman life coach entrepreneur. She runs a host of masterminds, which is how I got to know her. And we've been talking a lot about that idea of the long haul game, and how even already we're noticing people drop off in their personal commitment now that a little time has passed. And so really saying it's not what you say on social media that matters here, as a company and as an individual. It matters what you're willing to look at, what you're willing to explore.
Yeah.
Well, you worked a long time to find that job.
I did. And as you know, and there may be some people, as you said, who are in the conversation who either are unemployed or feel underemployed. And I will say, and Mo went through this journey with me, that I stepped off of full-time work for a little bit to have some more time with family. And I stayed active in doing board work and other things. But when I decided that I wanted to go back full-time, it was eye-opening for me, some of the issues that are very real that exist for older women in looking for work. Also in just those issues that you face, that people feel like you're overqualified for some things and you feel like you're underqualified for other things, and so sell yourself short. So it was an emotional roller coaster. That came out in a really good place.
Well, you were so patient. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about this week, Kim, I've been thinking about you a lot, actually, because I've been talking to so many of these folks through Rework Week, and noticing the long-term game of being not either underemployed or not working or not in a job that you're loving, and how hard that can be on your energy and motivation. And I just remember watching you, because there was that period of time we wrote the book. You were, like you said, very busy with board work. Then you consulted for a bit. Then you decided, okay, I want to go back in. I want to be an executive again. And then it didn't happen as fast as you thought. I mean, you were right there in San Jose and Silicon Valley, and you just really I remember talking to you about a few opportunities you had, and you were like, you know what? I just don't think it's the right values fit,
Yeah.
or I don't think I don't want to commute 2 hours each way.
Right.
And I think I just watched you apply our model and the rigor of kind of holding out, hanging on until you found this job. And yet I remember my surprise when you took the job at Duolingo, because you're like, well, it's in Pittsburgh. And you're living in California. I was like, oh, are you guys all moving to California? And I think the way that you've creatively made that work, because of the importance of this job and the fit that you felt, I think that's inspiring for people to hear too,
Yeah. Yeah. And, in full transparency, I have a son who is at Carnegie Mellon University. So there was a little bit of a plus to being in Pittsburgh, though that certainly wasn't a driver. I didn't set out to find a job in Pittsburgh, but, that model of thinking about the factors of fit and the culture, the relationships, the lifestyle and stage, the meaning, the financial piece, and thinking about what trade-offs I was willing to make and what trade-offs I wasn't willing to make. And, it's interesting, people frequently will ask you, like, what's your dream job? And one of the things I came to realize is that my dream job can be put together in a number of different ways, and that being flexible about that, and then sometimes even acknowledging that you may be in a stage of life where your paid work is not going to supply all your need for meaning, and then thinking about, how do I supplement that in other parts of my life? And, continuing to recognize that work is super important because it's where I spend so much of my time, but thinking of yourself as having more dimensions than just who you are at work.
Yes, and I just watched you. I felt like I got to bear witness to you doing that, and being self-compassionate and flexible. And also, the other thing you did that really struck me during that phase was I watched you really analyze the options that came forward for you, really, really thoughtfully around, because I can remember some of them you'd be super excited about. You'd be like, I think this might be it. And then a few weeks later, you'd be like, I talked to them again and I'm
Yeah.
not sure. And I think for people when you're at, we talked a lot about this in Rework Week, is that it's so easy to jump from the frying pan to the fire,
Well,
you
it
know?
is. And we can so tell ourselves stories about like all of the reasons why it's going to be good. You know, even when your
Confirmation bias.
is telling you that there's some red flags, I think it's human nature to look over those. One of the things that I'm curious about too, you and I spent time thinking about how do I get a sense of things like the culture of a company before I make a decision, and how we do this in this remote COVID world. Um, I think it's a huge challenge. It,
It is a challenge. I even think about something you and I spoke about around how some of our tips for people. I think one of these is on our toolkit that we uploaded, is that wonderful list of questions we had for like when you go into the company and how you look at the artifacts of the company. And people don't have any of that. All they have is this one-dimensional flat screen, no emotion can be felt. We try with Zoom, we get close, but I think it's got to be very, very difficult to assess fit. And it makes me think about, one thing I've been talking with folks about is that the conversations they have with people that know that company, people that work there, stakeholders, customers. I think those become really, really important. The stories.
yeah, I completely agree with that. You have to probably be even a little more diligent with doing your due diligence,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be able to rely on some of those physical cues.
Well, totally. Which also
And
makes it harder to sell yourself
it
too, I
does.
think. Yeah.
It does. And it's interesting too. I have one good friend who was considering a move, and it felt like the job was really exciting. She was getting good connection, but came to a place of just saying, I can't make a decision this big right now.
Mm.
And I think that's another thing, just to give ourselves a little bit of grace about all we're going through, and yeah, being careful about not jumping out of the fire into the frying pan.
It's so true. It's funny you mentioned that, because we added for the Love Your Job program that we launched, this recorded program, which I'll have to tell you the personal story about that sometime. It's so funny because I'm not used to recording curriculum. And so I learned a lot about that process. But we added a bonus module, which is for people that want to go out on their own, because we felt like there was a lot of need, right now. But I've so often thought in my own situation, because I am an entrepreneur and I haven't worked for someone else in so many years. I've I've thought about, over the years, should I go take another job? But I've also been thinking lately how grateful I am that I have an established practice, because I think to start something now would also be hard. It could be really good if you are willing to take some risk and if you can, but it could also be quite hard in terms of those same dynamics. How do you network? How do you pitch what it is that you're doing when you maybe aren't in that space, before? So I really feel for people that are entrepreneurial, starting something new, the restaurants that we're going to open April 1st, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. And well, also, you know, acknowledging that these times of crisis always contain seeds of opportunity and ways of doing business differently that maybe somebody who's super entrenched in the way they've been doing it for years won't be able to recognize, like somebody who's coming at it from a whole fresh perspective.
No, I think you're totally right. I'm curious, Cammie, because right now in your job, you've been staffing up in your group, right, as the CMO. And are you seeing anything interesting in terms of what your new hires are bringing around what they want, what they hunger for in their relationship with Duolingo?
Yeah, I think that I've got one person who started in April, so who has literally never been to the office. And I think as a company with our summer interns, and we did maintain our summer internship program, I think we've brought on like 60 people since April who have literally never been in the office. And so we've tried to do a lot of creative things. We do these like 15-minute meet and greets. Where I had 2 of them today, where we just randomly, we use something in Slack called Donut that just randomly pairs people up. And we just talk for 15 minutes, getting to know somebody that we wouldn't know otherwise. We had an amazing celebration last Friday for Juneteenth, where we brought in a number of different Black entrepreneurs to just do talks on Zoom about their business. And we did a paint and sip. So we sent out painting kits to everybody and did one of those painting classes. And then we had a DJ and had a party. And so we've been trying to be really deliberate about social interaction, also trying to provide more mechanisms for feedback. So surveying each of our new employees at 30 days and at 90 days about what's working, what's not working, because it's hard, and it's you're not going to be able to form exactly the same levels of trust and commitment when you're purely virtual. But that doesn't mean that you can't try new things to try and make it as good as it could possibly be given the circumstances.
Totally. Good for you. And I'm not surprised. I mean, it's like I listen to you talk actually, and I go, oh my gosh, you are in the right place, because as a leader, you're so good at creating community in your team. Like I've always known you that way when you were a client, when you were at Nintendo, and in our work. And I think, gosh, how lucky some of your employees must be to be joining that team, because I think I'm noticing some of my clients are naturally or proactively hardwired to build those kinds of connections and work and put in that extra effort virtually. I think you are, and some aren't. And I think that the ones that aren't, although you've given me a few ideas, I'm making notes to do with my team. I think we need to have a sip of paint and sip, but I think it's a call to action for leaders to really get on their game.
One of the things too is acknowledging as a leader, if that's not how you're wired, then who can you partner with to bring that? Whether it's an outside coach and consultant, whether it's, someone on, one of your direct reports who is wired for more of that relational empathy. But you don't have to do it all yourself, but you need to recognize that it needs to get done. Somehow, some way.
Right. I love that idea of partnering, bringing somebody in. Cammie, from your own experience, I'm jumping back to a previous conversation because I'm curious how you would answer this, because I was trying to remember, how long did you look before you landed at Duolingo?
Let's see. I started, when did we published the book in 2017.
2017 was like May, like our launch was May.
No, for sure. So after you and I published the book, then I went with my family on that 5-week road trip.
Yeah.
And my plan was, when we got back from that trip, I was going to start seriously looking for a job. So that was July of 2017. And I took the job in July of 2018. So it was a year. It was a year of pretty serious looking.
What would you say to people that might be watching this that are in that place, that are like, they've either been made irrelevant because of COVID, or they were in transition even before COVID, and they're starting to wonder about the months ticking by. Like, what would you say to them to keep hope alive?
Uh, Things that helped me were one, networking with other people in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Um, it just helped me feel a lot less alone.
Yeah.
I also found that those were actually my best sources of potential jobs.
Oh, interesting.
Um, so just having those kind of soul sisters who were going through it at the same time, um, was really really helpful. Um, Trying to have other things in life to give you joy and energy, whether it's your yoga practice or your meditation or prayer or,
You started cooking. Didn't you start baking?
yes. Um, because I think those kinds of things helped me maintain my optimism. And, optimism is going to be an important thing to project
Yeah.
as you're looking for work. Um, and then just, for me, a lot of it was maintaining faith. And when I got a no, just looking back on my career and saying, hey, other times that I've heard no, actually in hindsight, that was a good thing to have not done. Um, and, I
That's
think
powerful.
even though we were doing the book earlier, I think if you can find ways to um, like use your talents in other ways, whether it's, writing pieces on LinkedIn. I had told myself, okay, I'm going to write something on LinkedIn and publish every month as a way of just keeping my name out there and
Mhm.
trying to build my network. So, you know, treating networking and job hunting a bit like a job in and of itself, with discipline around what you want to accomplish every week.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I love that I love what you just said about when you hear the no, like, yes, it always hurts when you hear the no, but also remembering that other no's that you've said yes to or whatever maybe didn't work out so good, and that's definitely true for me. Like, I think of some of my pain points are more things like wanting to get a speaking gig I don't get, or when we wrote our book proposal, we got rejected, and just remembering, that the what ends up landing is what is meant to land, and not making it all about that we've failed,
Right.
because that employer didn't want us for that job.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Their loss.
yeah, their loss. Exactly. Exactly. Well, I see a couple of good things on the chat. Trisha's talking about companies feeling like, or people feeling like their values and beliefs can't be compromised for financial gain, and then job fit is more important to their happiness. And I
Yeah.
really agree, Trisha.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think one of the things that is certainly not always in our control, but to the extent that we can maintain as much discipline as we can with our finances,
Mm,
so that we, and a lot of us, I think, sometimes find that when we have to do with less, we actually can do with a little bit of less,
yeah.
and that gives us a little more flexibility to be able to look for that right fit.
I think that's so true. I've really learned a lot from that, watching Ian, my oldest son, he's a musician in residence for a local group, but it's not really full time. And then he has his song stuff that he does, but singing is a super spreader. So the open hub stuff is totally
Yeah.
off. And he's done a really good job both filling his life with passionate things that he really loves to do and that he's curious about, and also really keeping his means, living really closely within his means and not being reckless about how to do that. And I admire the way that he's doing that, because it's a long game and it can create a little bit of panic when we overspend and then we feel that pressure, more intensely. So, yeah, I think that's a really good tip. Really good tip. Well, anything else you want to share or ask me or anybody on the line wants to ask? I don't want to take your whole evening.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to skid off pretty soon because I have one more meet and greet with a young software engineer this
Oh,
afternoon. But
awesome. Good job.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I find, by Friday afternoon, Zoom feels really fatiguing.
Yeah.
And, I remember those early days in March when I was doing Zoom happy hours with with my friends from college. And now that is like the most unappealing thing. So I love just taking walks and talking on the phone now to,
Totally. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to call you on the phone.
yeah, even my one-on-ones now, I've tried to shift some of them away from Zoom to just walking and talking.
Well, I think I have my own theory about that, which is that I think our need for human connection is so high. And because we can't feel each other in our limbic brain response, I think we're like trying to feel that limbic brain connection, but we can't because we don't feel each other. So then we're so tired because we're just really trying to connect. I think it's a real thing. And I've noticed how a lot of times now if I'm not conscious, I just schedule every meeting on Zoom. And I didn't used to do that. I talked to people on the phone all the time.
Right.
So keeping that in mind, using the phone, it's a good technology for us. Well, I so appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to talk to us. I want to let you go to do your meet and greet, but I also want to thank our Rework folks that are on this Zoom call because they've been awesome super fans and testing the curriculum and really bravely thinking about who they are and what they want and what happens next. So I hope you guys out there feel me at your back, supporting you. And Cammie, it's so good to see you. And we'll talk and walk sometime soon.
Sounds
All
great.
right, take care.
Great.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.